It is Tuesday, December 7th, 7 p.m. here in Washington, D.C., and I'd like to welcome you to tonight's edition of Nation's Pastime in the nation's capital, WCUA's only baseball-centric talk show. I'm your host, Andrew Snaith, here as always with my co-hosts James Higgins and Robbie Cruz, and we'll be breaking down the latest in the baseball world. But first, thank you all so much for tuning in. We're live every Tuesday, 7 p.m. here on WCUA Radio, and our shows are posted the next day in podcast form on our YouTube channel. You can find all the information you need to know about that on our Instagram, at @PastimeCap. We post there about big signings, we post highlights from the shows, and we post when our shows go up on YouTube to listen to. So definitely go ahead and follow at @PastimeCap on Instagram. If you want to call in at all during tonight's show, that number is 202-319-5106. 202-319-5106. Guys, I think we have to start off with the show, of course, by addressing what everyone already knows, and that's the fact that we are currently living through the first lockout in a while here in Major League Baseball.
The last lockout happened, and I think it was 1994, around that time. And honestly, this just seems like an absolute disaster. The meeting lasted 7 minutes. That was the first meeting that the players and the owners had. They had another meeting that lasted about 30 minutes. These guys aren't making much progression in a deal right now, it appears, and that's something that's extremely concerning. You see Rob Manfred's letter to the fans. You see the Players Union Association statement. Honestly, I think both sides are to blame here because nobody's taking accountability. Nobody's sacrificing anything. You know, it seems like the players want everybody making $400 million while the owners, they don't want anybody to be making anything. This is a big problem that Major League Baseball has, and there's a lot of things that they got to figure out. They got to work together, and they have to sacrifice things if they're going to make this work.
And another thing, and we'll get to this in a minute, put the images back up for the headshots. I think that's the one takeaway from the lockout that every fan is upset about. I mean, look, everyone, we knew that this was coming 5 years ago. You know, Jeff Passan and Ken Rosenthal, they alluded to it then that the 2016 they were just signing it into place for the 2021 quote nuclear war that Jeff Passan alluded to in his Yahoo Sports article from 2016. Unfortunately, the lockout has happened. Hopefully, they get it resolved before we actually miss real games. We saw how ugly this got in the middle of right at the beginning of the pandemic when they were trying to negotiate a 60-game season in 2020. Many players spoke out on Twitter how they were going to come back to this in 16 months and it was going to be ugly, so why not just resolve it before then? Obviously, that didn't happen. It wasn't a good look for the sport then, especially right at the height of the pandemic when sports were shut down for 4 months. It's not a good look now. Hopefully they can resolve this and not fight like cats and dogs because it's greedy. It's especially from the owners. It's greedy. It's unfortunate that's come to this, and hopefully we don't miss any baseball. But unfortunately, we're probably in for a boring few months.
Yeah, honestly, it seems like that might be the case. I know a lot of dates have been thrown around. I think best case, hopefully around February, hopefully before pitchers and catchers start reporting, if not a little bit after. But it does seem like negotiations not at a good place, probably not going anywhere for a while. You have both sides saying, hey, you know what? We need more money, both sides. And it's not going to go anywhere. It's not a good look for the sport, especially after having that 60-game season that James talked about. It's just not a good look at all, especially with baseball getting a little more popular, having big recognizable names, national stars, worldwide stars, Shohei Ohtani, people like that. And ultimately, it's overall bad for the sport, and I think I'd agree with Robbie. Both sides are to blame.
And also, this is just going to hurt baseball's ratings at the end of the day. Going this many months without any news, any rumors, any drama, nobody's going to be interested in baseball unless things start happening and coming out. So if the owners want to make money, if the players want to get paid, they have to come to an agreement, and the only way they can do that is by making sacrifices, and it's just frustrating to see that nobody wants to do that.
The only thing that will save baseball over these next few months is another big cheating scandal to come out. Else there's going to be nothing in the press.
No, there's going to be absolutely nothing. I mean, the winter meetings have already officially been canceled for the Major League side, of course, not the minor league, but that's not very exciting.
Rule 5 draft.
Yeah, Rule 5 draft, exactly. I mean, it's going to be a whole lot of nothing until they can sort this out. And, like James said, we can't even go online and look at the pictures of our favorite players on our rosters anymore because they've scrubbed them completely.
And outside of the stadiums, too. They took down a Bryce Harper picture outside of Citizens Bank Park, right?
They did. I don't know if that's a liability thing or I don't know if that's a bargaining agreement, or a bargaining tactic. But, yes, for example, the Bryce Harper 2021 NL MVP banner that was outside Citizens Bank just got put up once the lockout happened, taken down. There's no sign of the players anywhere. If you go outside of Citizens Bank Park right now, for an example, they normally have the Topps baseball cards of all the players, of the starting lineups, things like that, outside of all the pictures of them all and their names, completely gone. All gone, scrubbed from the stadium. I'm sure this is the case at all of the stadiums across America, and I guess also Toronto. I mean, it's crazy. It's absolutely crazy that we're living through this, like you said, for the first time since 1994. And something to note, this is the first time a lockout's happening where both sides have the potential to use social media as a bargaining tool. And I think it's going to be really interesting and exciting to see what each side does. We've already seen both sides issue statements over social media, and then, of course, MLB.com using their tactic of taking down the player images. It's going to be little petty things like that couldn't happen back in 94 that I think it's going to be cool to see what they do with them here in 2021.
As I think we saw during the negotiations before the 60-game season, the owners in Major League Baseball are going to leak everything and do everything in their power to try to make the players look bad when ultimately they are the bad guys. Now, yes, as Robbie said, it comes from greed from both sides, but I think most people will agree that the owners and Major League Baseball as a whole, they are the bad guys. They are the ones who already have the money. And another thing to note, they already lost so much money in 2020. Why would they want to lose any more money now and delay games? I think that's the biggest thing when the pressure mounts on them in late January going into February. I think a good benchmark for this is around Valentine's Day. That's usually when pitchers and catchers start to report. Spring training games usually start around the 25th of February. So I think that's going to be when the pressure really starts to mount. Hopefully we can use 2020 as an example of how much money was lost. The owners and players not wanting to lose any more money, no more prorated salaries. Even if they get 130 games in, that's still 32 games that players aren't getting paid. Whatever it is, let's get this full season in.
Well, and that's the thing. After losing so much money, you'd think both sides could be like, hey, we both want more money, but let's make some compromises here so we don't actually lose what we're already going to make. I mean, It's very frustrating. I know there's no sense getting upset about it right now because nothing's going to happen over the next week or probably month. But as we get closer to January, February, I think you're going to see a lot of anger, not only from us here in the studio, but also all around baseball.
Yeah, it's just a bad look overall. And we've already seen the players use social media to show their anger. I mean, we all know about the players changing their profile picture images to...
That was funny.
Yeah, a lot of the players are starting to do that. And these are indirect messages that they're sending to the league, to the owner, saying, this is ridiculous that you guys are treating us this way. It's ridiculous that there's no negotiations. And like I said, the fact that the meetings have only been like 7 minutes, they've only been 30 minutes, that's a bad sign that nothing is coming close. We're not anywhere near an agreement. And honestly, to say that an agreement could come by January, I think that might be pushing it.
Yeah, I don't think at earliest. I don't think it's coming until March 15th at earliest.
Yeah. Wow. So you're blowing past Valentine's Day. So you think best case middle of spring training?
Valentine's Day was the benchmark, but I mean, I think how both these sides operate.
Unfortunately, I think you're right, yes. And it's funny, right? So, Robbie, I want to go back. You mentioned about the different players using different things on social media to troll. And one of the best ones I saw was, I'm sure you guys saw Jameson Taillon's tweet from this past week about, in case you didn't know, he is rehabbing from an injury. And during the lockout, you're not allowed to communicate with any personnel from the Major League Baseball teams. That includes Jameson Taillon communicating with physicians and team doctors and people who are helping him rehab from his injury. So I think he said something like, well, I can't communicate with my team physician. I guess I can just take my boot off and start running around. No one's telling me otherwise.
Yeah, no, he said that. And honestly, it's just such a weird situation. And there are a lot of questions that I have going into the lockout. This is just going to be really weird. It's going to be really strange, and I don't think I've ever seen anything like this because the NBA was locked out, and I think it was 2010. James, you know if that's correct?
2011. 2010 into 2011.
Right, and that lockout only lasted 30 games. That lockout lasted, I think, like a month and a half. But the big difference between that lockout and this one is that this lockout doesn't seem like it's getting anywhere. It doesn't seem like it's going to end anytime soon. With the NBA lockout in 2011, it seemed like there was so much hope and potential to come to an agreement, and they ultimately did it pretty quickly. But with this is a whole nother situation. Like I said, it's just ridiculous that the meetings have only been 7 and 30 minutes, where, as in with NBA 2011, they were productive right away. This is ridiculous, and it's not good.
And Scott Boras needs to stop making it about himself because he's on neither side of the negotiations here.
Yeah, he's not helping, to say the least. I don't know what's up with him. And
He's
the
full of.
comments he takes
You want to know what's up with him? Money and billions of dollars, because he's full of greed.
You know, it always gets me with Scott Boras, not to go on a tangent here, but do you think that he writes like these things he has about his players at home, like the night before, and comes with them prepared?
Yes, Harper's Bazaar. You know, whatever you. Look,
I think Conforto being the king of Queens.
Scott is the best in the world at his job. I'm not trying to take anything away from that. Scott Boras is the best in the world at his job, which is making a boatload of money for his players and getting a portion of that for himself. But he needs to stay out of this, because no matter what he says, he's not at the negotiating table for the players or for the owners in Major League Baseball. You can think he might side with the players, but the owners are writing the checks to the players he employs. So he's probably trying to just play both sides amendably. He should just stay out of this as much as he can, because he's not negotiating anything.
Absolutely. And if you have any thoughts on the MLB lockout you want to share with us tonight, go ahead, call us, 202-319-5106. Let us know your opinion. Let us know what you think. How long is it going to last? What do you think about the player side, the owner side, all the perspectives? Let us know. 202-319-5106 is that number. Well, guys, luckily, we do have a lot of stuff to talk about this week, because there was 24 hours after our show last week where signings were still allowed to happen before the lockout occurred. And there's a good amount of signings that did occur in that last 24 hours. So why don't we break down some of them? I apologize, not just signings. There were some trades as well, some pretty significant ones. So let's break them down. Why don't we start with an interesting team that we don't really know what they're doing at this point. Are they trying to win in 2021 or not? And that's the Chicago Cubs, because this is a team that basically unloaded their entire roster in July of last year, and now all of a sudden they're spending money. Particularly, of course, Marcus Strowman, one of the better starting pitchers left on the market, and he got 3 years and $71 million with an opt-out after the second season from the Chicago Cubs. So, Robbie, I'm going to ask you here, what's the deal here? Why are the Cubs deciding to go out and spend Justin Verlander money on a guy like Marcus Strowman after unloading their roster?
You know, this is actually an interesting take that I have, but I think that the Cubs are looking to compete next year.
Wow.
I think that the big thing for them is they want to bring fans to the stadium, they want to get fans excited, and they want to show people that they're serious about winning. And I have another bold take. I think they could be serious contenders for Carlos Correa once the lockout ends.
Now, that's interesting. That's interesting, because there was a report that they were one of the teams that were checking in on him.
And to me, them spending money on Marcus Strowman, getting guys like Clint Frazier, Yan Gomes, adding these guys to the team, these are guys that are vets, but they're guys that can also help you win games. Like Yan Gomes is an underrated catcher, in my opinion. Sure. And Marcus Strowman, in my opinion, a lot of people say he's overrated. I actually think that he gets too much hate, and I actually think in a way that that makes him a little bit underrated, just because he gets so much criticism. But to me, it shows that they're trying to be competitive and also bring fans to stands. And I've heard people say Wilson Contreras could be getting traded. I'm sure we'll get to that in a second. But I don't think that they are going to trade him because they're spending money on these players.
If they're trying to compete, like Robbie said, they shouldn't trade him, but there's not a spot for him. Don't say left field. He can't play left field. He's not going to play first base. He's probably going to get traded. But, I think the big thing is Strowman taking a 3-year deal with essentially a $22 million AAV. The thing with Strowman here, $23 million AAV. The thing with Strowman is that he's going to hit the open market again when he's 33, so maybe he's thinking take a shorter deal, higher AAV, and get another 4 or 5 year deal when he's 33 if he's still pitching well. Again, we all know he's a high ground ball pitcher, but he pitches, he'll pitch 170 to 200 innings a year. He'll get outs when you need it, but you need a good defense behind him. He's a ground ball pitcher. He had a 3.02 ERA last year and only went over 3 in his final start of the season. That was the first time all season his ERA was over 3. He was 10-13, so he finished 3 games below 500. I think the big thing with Strowman is that it's a good signing for the Cubs in terms of it's a good signing for the Cubs in terms of getting a good pitcher in there. It's a confusing signing because we don't really know what they're doing. I don't think they're going to be good this year, but the division stinks relatively. So, I mean, when you the Cubs are not good, but the division is also not very good. So maybe in year 3 of this deal, if they get the right pieces together, they can compete.
See, that's what I was about to say. So the Cubs know that their division's weak right now, and by making a few solid signings, I think they believe that they could be potential contenders to win the division, especially if they do what I think, and that's get Carlos Correa. One other thing that I think makes this signing kind of confusing, though, is Marcus Strowman doesn't go deep in games at all. I mean, he'll usually go 5, maybe 6 innings on a good day, and the Cubs' bullpen's actually relatively weak. It's got a lot of flaws. It's not very strong, so that's something I think they're going to need to address if they're looking to actually be competitive this year. But we'll have to wait and see what other signings they make and what they'll do.
Well, before Andrew gets this, I don't think the Cubs are going to be competitive this year. I don't really think they're going to sniff 500. They have way too many holes. They traded away their entire roster last year. You look at St. Louis and Milwaukee. Yes, the division isn't good, but those are two very good teams that will beat up on Pittsburgh, beat up on Cincinnati, and beat up on Chicago. Another thing with Correa that I wanted to bring up, Correa said he's open to a rebuild, so if the Cubs sign him, he knows he's in for a rebuild for 2 or 3 years before they really got that next great Cubs team. Because I don't think the Cubs are anywhere close to being legitimate World Series contenders. Maybe in year 3 of Strowman's deal, they can compete in a weak division, but I don't think they're close to competing for a World Series. That farm system needs to be rebuilt, and more importantly, that Major League roster needs to be rebuilt.
I like the Correa point a lot. I don't think it's insignificant that they were a team that was linked to him, and if he's open to a rebuild, it does make a lot of sense. Like Robbie was saying, it'll bring people to the ballpark during these rebuild years, and will definitely accelerate that rebuild as they get more and more pieces. Something to note though about Wilson Contreras, obviously he's not going to be able to play left or first like we said, but like we know, there's a very good chance that the NL will have a DH next year, and a lot of people think Wilson Contreras might be traded, but he's a solid guy to just plug in there every day at DH and alternate catching.
I think that'd be a little bit weird though, because he's such a solid defensive catcher. To me, it doesn't make much sense to DH him, but I do think it's a good idea to possibly platoon him, like have him either DH and then catch, like kind of go back and forth, or just change it up occasionally. But to me, I think Wilson Contreras has to be an everyday catcher because he's a Gold Glove catcher, in my opinion. He's a really strong defensive catcher, and you just need him to start. If
you had to put money on it, you're going to say that he's going to be traded once the lockout ends?
If I were to put once the lockout ends, that's really tough. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that he doesn't get traded.
Okay.
I think that the Cubs want him to be they want him to be the face of their franchise.
You think there's a reason they didn't offload him yet?
Exactly.
I think they will trade him.
Yeah, I was going to say, they were really trying to get rid of him in July, and it just seemed like nobody wanted to meet their price.
Yeah, I think, especially with the universal DH, some team is going to want him, or someone's going to have an injury suffered where they can plug Contreras in behind the plate. I definitely think he's getting traded. They're not anywhere close to competing. They can continue to rebuild the farm. They can continue to get valuable assets back, whether it's minor league guys or major league guys. I think he's as good as gone.
All right, very fair take indeed. Why don't we move on to another team that did a lot in the last 24 hours before the lockout occurred, and that's the Boston Red Sox. Now, the Boston Red Sox not only made 2 signings since our last show, but also made a trade that has left a lot of people with their heads scratching. So why don't we start with that one? James, you can go ahead and break it down for us, and I think what a lot of people are wondering is, why did the Red Sox do this?
Well, we will get to the trade in a minute. First, we'll get to the signings.
You want to do the signings first?
Yes, let's do the signings first.
Right.
Then I will get to the very head-scratching trade. So they signed James Paxton to a 1-year, $10 million deal with 2 club options for 23 and 24 that can escalate to a 3-year, $35 million deal. The deal shows their financial flexibility and prowess in a different way than most, because Paxton is not going to be able to pitch till July at the earliest, but most likely an August return like Chris Sale returned from Tommy John in 2021. He can pitch out of the bullpen. He can be a glorified opener. And if he pitches well in that role, they pick up the club options, so it's then a 2-year, $25 million deal. He solidifies the back end of the rotation for 23 and 24. If he doesn't come back well, if he doesn't come back at all, or if he doesn't perform well, then they offload him. They give him $10 million for this year. They say thank you and goodbye. So I think it's a creative deal. It's a deal that for 1 year you're willing to take the risk, especially with the luxury tax probably increasing once the lockout ends, and the Red Sox are going to blow past the luxury tax this year. They've stayed under it the last 2 years, so it's time for that. They've reset. It's time for them to go over. So I think that deal, I wish Paxton would be available sooner, but I'm fine with the deal that Heimblum signed him to. Michael Wacha, 1-year, $7 million deal. It's more money than he made in the past 2 years combined. He has very strong numbers against the Yankees. He pitched very well against the Yankees last year. I believe in 18 innings, he only gave up 3 or 4 earned runs. This is a depth guy for the Red Sox. He's a back end of the rotation or a glorified opener or a middle inning guy. The Paxton and the Wacha signings, I don't think, if people want to try to say they're done getting pitching, they're not done getting pitching. I mean, this isn't even close. I mean, look, you're going to have Chris Sale, Nathan Eovaldi. You're probably going to slot Tanner Houck in there, and then you have some sort of Wacha, Pivetta, somebody who they sign. They're far from finished from getting pitching.
Did you mention Rich Hill as well?
That's who I was getting to.
Yeah.
I was getting to Rich Hill next. Rich Hill, they signed to a 1-year, $5 million deal. Another, he's a 41-year-old, another veteran signing for Heimblum.
Makes his return, right?
Yeah,
he
was a
made.
Red Sox
Yes,
before.
he's made. he's been a Red Sox for many times before, but
This
you know,
is his third or fourth stint, I think.
I think it is his third stint, right?
I think he's
It's remarkable.
I think
It really
he's been
is.
with the team on multiple different stints. I'll get that for you right now. I think it's more than 4,
Well,
honestly, but
Can I say something
I
about
think
the
it's
Red
his
Sox really
7th
quickly?
stint, and I'm not joking.
Oh my gosh, my quick point about the Red Sox though is you lose Eduardo Rodriguez, and like James said, that frees up so much money. But to me, you're signing guys like James Paxton, Rich Hill, and Michael Wacha. I understand that those guys have good numbers against the Yankees, but what about the rest of the league? I don't think that moves the needle at all.
Well,
I don't think it really does much. And yeah, it's depth guys, but I think they needed a guy who they like a third solid starter, in my opinion.
No. But
Yeah, I thought Marcus Strowman would have been great for the Red Sox.
trust me, that third starter is coming. People that think they're done, look, Wacha and Hill. Look, I think it's technically Hill's 6th stint because he was there with the Sox from 10 to 12, but he signed like a minor league deal, was promoted, minor league deal again, promoted.
Well, who could the third guy be for the Red Sox? I mean,
Sean Manaea, Chris Bassett, Frankie
okay,
Montas.
so you think it'll be through a trade, not free agency? Okay.
Yes, probably. But you know what? Like, this is far from a finished product because if there was no lockout, the Red Sox would have signed someone by now. I think it just like there was that whole flurry before the lockout. The Red Sox are not done by any means. Do you really think Chaim Bloom and Alex Cora are going to go in with a back end of Rich Hill, Michael Wacha, and James Paxton, who's hurt? No knock on those guys, but those guys can be solid middle inning guys in the bullpen, solid openers. You put them through the rotation for a time or two to give someone a rest, but this rotation is not a finished product at all. They're going out to get more pitching.
One other comment about the Red Sox: I do agree with James. I think they will get that third pitcher, but you got to remember, you're going to be competing with the Yankees for that pitcher because they're looking for a number 2 pitcher behind Garrett Cole.
The Oakland A's have 3 available.
So that's what I'm saying. So you think that the Red Sox and Yankees are going to end up getting 2 of those Oakland Athletic pitchers?
I don't know who the Red Sox are going to get, but I think Sean Manaea would be a perfect replacement for Eduardo Rodriguez.
I can see Manaea going to the Red Sox and Chris Bassett going to the Yankees.
Sean Manaea would be a perfect replacement for Eduardo Rodriguez. He's 2 years younger than Erod. He has a similar arsenal. He'd fit right in at Fenway Park. He'd fit right in the middle of that rotation. The Red Sox have prospect capital and even major league depth to trade for Manaea. The Red Sox rotation is not a finished product. They're going to go out and get more pitching. It's just because of the lockout that people think, oh, they made these flurries of move, they're done. They are not done by any means, both offensively and adding to the rotation and or the bullpen. And going to get another pitcher, they're most likely going to slot Houck into the rotation, but if they don't, this allows them to keep Whitlock in the bullpen, which is the best move possible. Whitlock is going to be a top 5 closer in the game if they keep him in that closer spot. He was the only guy in the bullpen who Cora trusted late in the season and in the postseason. It's the best thing that could possibly happen. So that's the first good thing. That even if Wacha and Hill and Paxton aren't, guys per se, they're solid back-end guys that can allow Whitlock and possibly even Houck to stay in the bullpen where they've both been very effective and nasty. Now, if Houck goes up to the rotation, they're going to let the training wheels off, let him go 6-7 innings each time out, let him face the lineup for a third time finally because he's got nasty stuff. He'll mix in his breaking stuff more. I think he's going to be a very effective starter when he finally gets the training wheels taken off.
So in the words of Billy Beane from the movie Moneyball, it seems like the A's are going to be the farm system for the Red Sox and Yankees rotation this year. Is that our prediction?
Well, the thing is, Chaim Bloom said in his last press conference before the lockout, he wants to add a right-handed bat and he wants to add more pitching. He wants to add a high-end bullpen arm, and he wants to add a starter.
Well, I think they're going to need a second right-handed bat now after a certain trade that was made.
Yes, after a very head-scratching trade. The Boston Red Sox traded Hunter Renfroe to the Milwaukee Brewers in exchange for Jackie Bradley Jr. and then 2 prospects, David Hamilton and Alex Benilis. Benilis was a third-round pick out of Louisville this year. He's a third baseman. Had a solid season in the minor leagues this year. David Hamilton was a late-round pick by Milwaukee in 2019. They were Milwaukee's 16th and 17th rated prospects. Renfroe was going to be owed. He was estimated to make about $7.1 million in arbitration this year. Jackie Bradley Jr. is going to make $9.5 million this coming season, and then next season he has a $12 million club option with an $8 million buyout. So at a minimum, the Red Sox are on the hook for $17.5 million of Jackie Bradley Jr.'s contract. In essence here, this is what the Red Sox did. They bought out the prospects because they liked the 2 prospects they got back from Milwaukee in Hamilton and Benilis, especially Alex Benilis. He was tremendous at Louisville, and he had a strong minor league season in his first season in Pro Ball this year. They upgraded their defense. Yes, Hunter Renfroe had 16 outfield assists this year, the most. He led Major League Baseball, but he also had 12 errors, the most by an outfielder by 3. The second most errors for an outfielder was 9. So he, Alex Cora and Chaim Bloom, what do they stress? They stress fundamental baseball. They stress defense. And while Renfroe made highlight reel throws, he was spectacular at times, but there were many times where he also overshot cutoff men, where he misread balls and they glanced off his glove. There was, in Game 161 in D.C., this didn't go down as an error, but there was a pop-up to shallow center that he literally lost in the twilight sun, and the Nationals almost made them pay, and it almost cost the Red Sox their season. So, Hunter Renfroe this year, he was tremendous offensively. He hit 31 homers. He almost had a 3,100 season. He was very close to accomplishing that for the first time. He had 96 RBIs. He had an 816 OPS. He was tremendous at the plate. He hit 259. I'm very happy the Red Sox got him from, as a steal from Tampa Bay in free agency. Thank you to Hunter Renfroe, but, the Red Sox wanted a defensive upgrade. Jackie Bradley Jr. can't hit. He better not be one of their starting outfielders. He's not good enough to be one of their starting outfielders. It was a defensive upgrade because the Red Sox prioritized defense. Jackie Bradley obviously provides that defensive upgrade, but he better be a fourth outfielder and a defensive replacement late in games because I will not be able to stand watching him start, in the starting lineup every day.
Well, I have one other comment. So, assuming Jackie Bradley Jr. is their starter,
No.
Assuming, hypothetically, if he is, I know the Red Sox have been linked to guys like Carlos Correa and other big infielders. I think that has to take them out of the Carlos Correa sweepstakes because what I would imagine they would do is they would move Enrique Hernandez to second base, and he would be their second baseman.
No.
You don't think so?
No. They would start Jackie. If for some reason that were to happen, Jackie would start in right and Kike would start in center. Chaim Bloom did address that.
Has Jackie Bradley Jr. ever played right field?
He played a few games there in 19 when they would give Mookie a day off, and then he did play some in Milwaukee.
Well, here's what I was thinking. So, okay, let's say, Jackie Bradley Jr. is their fourth outfielder, which I think is very possible. To me, the Red Sox, who's going to be their starting right fielder? I think that this opens up
Alex
the door
Verdugo.
for... I thought he was a left fielder.
Alex Verdugo is going to start in right. Seiya Suzuki's going to start in left.
That's what I was going to
Hernandez
say.
is going to start in center.
So, to me, that has to be a sign that they're going all in on Seiya Suzuki.
Look, as much as I want Schwarber back, Chaim Bloom said he wants to get a right-handed bat. You have Castellanos, Bryant, and Seiya Suzuki. Suzuki probably makes the most sense with his offensive upside and his defensive versatility.
Yeah.
Suzuki's going to start in left field. Verdugo's going to, or look, you could start Suzuki in right field too. But Suzuki, Verdugo, Hernandez is going to be your three starting outfielders.
Yeah, I think that's the big picture. Like, the Red Sox, they need a corner outfielder right now. They could sign Kyle Schwarber again, but to me it doesn't make much sense, especially if their priorities, as James says, is defense. Schwarber's not helping you out defensively very much. Come on. Like, we all know he's not a defensive upgrade. Like, he's just not good defensively at all. So to me,
I'd rather have him in the lineup than Jackie Bradley. Look, I want them to re-sign Schwarber, but since Chaim Bloom said he wanted a right-handed bat, that would sound like Schwarber's not coming back, and it sounds like they're going to really hone in on Seiya Suzuki or an outside shot at Bryant or Castellanos.
Yeah, so just to put a bow right on the Red Sox thing here, I think this is a good transition as well to another team. So Seiya Suzuki, been connected to a lot of teams. Quick note, he can still sign, correct me if I'm wrong, since he is an international free agent. So that's definitely going to be something.
No. Wait, he'll have his 20 days lifted when the lockout ends.
I'm sorry, that's what I meant.
His
clock
has been paused.
It's been frozen. Yeah. It will resume again once the lockout ends.
Yes.
But, it makes a lot of sense. Not only that, I know we were talking the other night, he has followed, for what it's worth, the Red Sox on Instagram. He doesn't do that for any other MLB team. And the comments and the leak reports that came out about Kyle Schwarber and the Phillies, that they were right there about to get the deal done, ran out of time. Apparently they were willing to give him a 3-year deal around $60 million, which is exactly what he's looking for. The whole Kevin Long situation we talked about, it seems like he's going to end up being the Philadelphia Phillies left fielder and probably a leadoff man. So why not go after a guy like Suzuki? Like James says, it makes a lot of sense. I think there's a good chance you see him being a Boston Red Sox.
Yeah, definitely. And I think one more thing, just because Chaim Bloom said they wanted a right-handed bat because of the loss of Renfroe, maybe when the lockout ends, maybe they go sign a right-handed bat in the infield. Like, maybe they take a shot at Correa and they focus their attention on someone else. Or maybe he's like, no, let's just go get Kyle Schwarber. But ultimately, I think it's going to be Seiya Suzuki. And then one quick thing about Renfroe, just transitioning to Milwaukee real quick. Milwaukee finally gets that power that's been missing from their lineup. Since, Yelich has not been himself the last 2 years. Willie Adames was a godsend to that team when he went over in the middle of May. He completely transformed himself. And as he said, I'm finally able to see the ball at the plate, so he could finally hit. But, Renfroe provides pop. He's hit 30 homers in 3 out of the last 4 years. The only one he didn't was a shortened 2020 season. He had an 815 OPS last year. He's tremendous at the plate. I wish the Red Sox didn't. I wish the Red Sox traded him for pitching, not for Jackie Bradley Jr. That was my biggest problem with it. I wish the Red Sox because Renfroe's a very valuable trade asset. Obviously, a lot of teams looking for pop. I wish they used them to trade for a legit starting pitcher rather than Jackie Bradley Jr. But they wanted to buy out the prospects. I think Hunter Renfroe is going to do very well in Milwaukee. I mean, that's a great ballpark for him to hit in. Hit behind Christian Yelich, and I think it's a great move for the Brewers.
Yeah, no, the Brewers got a really underrated outfielder, Hunter Renfroe, for sure. I mean, he's a really great power hitter. But going back to Seiya Suzuki, I think a report that came out a few days ago is that the Yankees were also heavily pursuing Seiya Suzuki right before the lockout. I'm not sure if you guys were aware of that, but it's interesting because it seems like the Yankees and the Red Sox are going to be competing with each other for several free agents and trade assets possibly.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. They both have a lot of holes that are the same that they need. I mean,
or one is trying to drive up the price of the other.
Or that. I was going to say there's always that. I mean, you think about when you had waiver claims in the past. One that comes to mind, Cody Ross, right? The Giants claimed him just so that the then first-place Padres couldn't get him. It's a situation like that. Maybe they're just trying to show interest and drive up the price. It wouldn't be the first time.
When the Yankees feigned interest in trading for Doug Mirabelli just so his plane flight back to Boston would be delayed, although he did make it there on a private police escort to the game on May 1st, 2006.
You gotta love it. Some petty stuff, but yeah, absolutely. Quick reminder, you want to call in and discuss anything about the signings that have happened, where you think your team's headed. 202-319-5106 is that number. Why don't we transition then? We were talking about Seiya Suzuki, we're talking about Kyle Schwarber. Let's talk about the Philadelphia Phillies, right? Because this is something that they've struggled with for the past couple years, is not only finding a solid center fielder, which we'll get into a rumor that might suggest where they're going to fill that hole in a bit, but the bullpen. The bullpen's been historically bad, and they went out and they signed a guy that a lot of people like the signing, has a lot of question marks, and that's Corey Kniebel, a 1-year, $10 million deal. Apparently, the Phillies were willing to give him 2. They wanted to give him 2, and apparently Kniebel wanted to bet on himself and said, no, I want a 1-year contract. And guys, I guess my question here is, the Phillies obviously been connected to pretty much all of the relievers at least once because they need massive help. Is this it? Have they found their guy? Is Corey Kniebel their closer, or is this one of many moves that they're about to make?
It's one of many moves, but I still think he ultimately ends up as their closer. He was tremendous for the Dodgers last year. Obviously, 2017 was a long time ago, but we saw how electric he was for Milwaukee in 17. The Phillies need help in the back end of the bullpen. I don't see why Kniebel couldn't be their closer unless they traded for Kimbrel. I think that would be the only way that would unseat him from that role. But look, you're paying him $10 million. Obviously, high-end closers get $16 million, but Knebel's shown he can do it before. Knebel was good for the Dodgers in various different roles last year. I really think that he's going to be their closer, and it's going to end up being the first of many moves for Philadelphia to shore up the bullpen.
Yeah, I mean, and that's exactly what I was going to ask about, right? Because they've been connected to Kimbrel, and it makes a lot of sense. There's not another team, I think we said on here last week, that needs a guy like Craig Kimbrel more than the Phillies, but they have now Corey Kniebel, a guy who's closed before, a guy who, when he was healthy last year, was very good for the Dodgers, a guy who has electric stuff. I mean, I think it's an overall great signing for sure. I'm not sure if they'd go ahead after making this move and trade for Kimbrel, though. I'm going to be honest. There's a lot of smaller guys out on the market that are still available that I think that they can fill holes with. Guys like Andrew Chafin, a guy that I really like, Ryan Tepera. These are guys that they're not names that, you look and go, wow, but they're names that can provide something to this Phillies bullpen that they haven't had in years, and that is consistency.
If the Phillies don't go over the luxury tax, hypothetically, how much money do they have to spend in free agency?
It was around $46 million with McCutchen and a couple others coming off the books.
Okay, and Knebel got what, $10 million?
He got 10, so they have around 36 left, assuming, although I do believe the luxury tax will be raised.
And hypothetically, we're assuming that they signed Kyle Schwarber.
I think the Kyle Schwarber connections are too strong. I think that deal will probably get done almost instantly when the lockout ends.
And how much you want to say Schwarber gets a year?
Well, the reported deal that they were trying to workshop was 3 years, $60 million, so around 20.
That leaves you about
$16 million.
$16 million.
And if you think about it, that's Craig Kimbrel's salary alone.
Exactly. Which is why I can't see them getting Craig Kimbrel.
Yeah.
If assuming I don't think they're going to hit the luxury tax, but if it does raise, I think that there's a better chance that Kimbrel goes to the Phillies. But I agree with James. I think they're going to. I think Corey Kniebel is going to be their closer. I think that they're going to potentially sign a guy, as Andrew said, like Andrew Chafin. I think they'll look for one more big reliever, but it's not going to be a guy like Craig Kimbrell because he just costs too much money. It'll be interesting to see who it is, but I can't see it being Craig Kimbrell.
Yeah, I would have to agree there. I mean, there's a lot of more interesting names out on the market still. You got guys like Kenley Jansen, who probably will get high AAV, but
I can't even see Kenley Jansen, though, because I think he's going to get too much money for the Phillies.
Yeah, I agree, exactly. Probably like a 2-year deal with high AAV. So, yeah, we'll have to see with both of them. It's going to be very interesting to see when this lockout ends, in my opinion, what kind of deals happen instantly. Because you get into this thing where I think we were talking about this, Robbie, a couple of days ago, almost like how the NBA has their free agent period. It starts and guys sign like within seconds. I think it's going to be interesting to see if that's the case or if some deals get done like within a couple of hours and you're going to be like, okay, well, yeah, they definitely weren't talking.
Yeah.
So
and if deals do get done instantly, I think Major League Baseball has to implement punishments on those teams. Like, when I told you about the Bulls getting Alonzo Ball, literally the second free agency dropped. The Bulls lost their draft pick because of that. So I don't know what kind of punishments baseball would implement.
There's not going to be anything because everyone's just going to be happy to be back. There's going to be so much that's going on under the table. This is how it's going to go down. GM X is going to call Agent Y and say, hey, you have client A that, I'm really interested in what would he cost. Agent Y is going to go, client A plays this defensive position and he's top 5 at his position. He also hits this. He drives in this many runs and has this OPS over the last 5 seasons. He's entering his age 28 season, and this is what it costs to get, someone who's top 5 at his position in his prime years. He'll cost about $27 million a year, and he's seeking 6 to 7 years.
Correct me if I'm wrong.
These calls are going to go down.
Nothing you just said breaks a rule, right?
No, it does not break a rule.
So do you think this kind of stuff's happening as we speak?
100%.
See, that's what I mean. That's very interesting.
Mr. Boris?
And here's the other thing I want to know is, right, if that's the case, I guess there's not going to be any guys like Pass and Heyman reporting leaks like that, right? Because that would kind of put a spotlight on it.
Yeah,
this is stuff we're not going to find out until...
They're not.
Right.
Look, stuff always goes on under the table. It's sports. It's a billion-dollar business. This is what's going to happen. Just let it be. Let the process be, and all will be well.
Absolutely.
I do think it's interesting, though, that you've seen reporters say, like, this team X has interest in player Y. So
it's already happening.
That's what I'm saying. Like, it's
the Red Sox have interest in Trevor Story. Like,
right.
Where did that come from with the lockout being already happening for 5 days?
Yeah, that's the point I'm making. So, like, it almost seems like it's just so obvious that teams are doing this right now.
Yeah, I think like you said, it's going to be interesting to see if it ends and you instantly have like 7 guys who are big names signed. But I think it's also going to be the longer this happens, the longer the lockout goes on, that is, the more likely you're going to see that happen. Because, if we get into spring training, we start missing spring training, these guys don't want the lockout to end and then try to find a team. You know what I mean? They want to get going and get working out.
Look, they're going to be training like opening day is on March 31st. They're not going to wait around. Like, there were definitely some guys who during quarantine just didn't do anything, and then they were like, 60-day season, oh shoot, we have to get ready really fast.
Yeah,
like,
the summer camp.
Yeah, Carabas on starting 9 said Nolan Arenado was training every day like it was Game 7 of the World Series, but obviously there were guys who just weren't training at all. One thing about the agent and GM conversations, I wonder how hard it is going to be for Heyman to not tweet anything out about Boris clients, because he's got Boris in his back pocket for everything.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good point. I mean.
It's all he does.
Oh man, we'll have to see with that. Why don't we shift to the Dodgers, right? Because we just talked about Kniebel, one of their relievers who they just lost, along with a couple other significant names, I would say, we discussed last week that they also lost. They did, however, retain someone in Chris Taylor. They gave him a 4-year, $60 million deal. A lot of money for a guy like him. But is this, along with, by the way, the Daniel Hudson deal, I don't know if we talked about that last week, signed him to a 1-year, $7 million deal. Are these moves that signal that the Dodgers are panicking a little bit? Like, hey, we got to retain some of these guys. We got to get some people going here because outside of that, I mean, all they've done is lose this offseason.
I mean, here's my thing with the Dodgers. Like, going into the offseason, we knew they weren't going to sign everybody. Like, they had, I think, 8 big free agents, and we knew they weren't going to sign everybody. So I don't know if panic is the right word because I don't think they are panicking. Like, I think they were prepared to lose some of their free agents. I think that they're betting on Daniel Hudson to be kind of like a Corey Kniebel type guy, like a guy who's going to come in and has a really good season.
Return to form.
Yeah, exactly. A guy who's almost written off, it seems like. So I don't think that these are panic moves. I think that they're still trying to compete. I mean, they're the Los Angeles Dodgers.
They still have depth. I mean,
exactly. And also, you can't forget they signed the man, the myth, the legend, Andrew Heendog earlier this offseason.
True. Can't forget him.
So they're trying, I guess, but I think that the era of them signing and acquiring the biggest player, I think we're kind of past that right now. So I just don't think that they want to open up their wallets right now. But I do think, though, that they are still trying to win. And to me, signing Chris Taylor for $15 million a year is not a panic move because, after all, he was an all-star last year. He's still a really solid player, and a lot of teams were interested in him. I mean, I heard about the Red Sox, the Mariners, the Blue Jays. A lot of these teams were interested in him. So I don't think the Dodgers are panicking. I think they know what they're doing.
No, it's not a panic move at all because the Dodgers are the deepest organization in Major League Baseball. Look, you're paying one of your super utility guys who can play anywhere $15 million a year, and he provides above-average production at the plate. You have a guy in Daniel Hudson who, as Robbie alluded to, can be this year's version of Corey Kniebel. He can be the 2020 version of Blake Trinan, where he rediscovered himself and is now one of the nastiest relievers in the game. You can slot Trinan into the closer role if you're losing Jansen. Look, they're not panicking and they're not suffering because if you lose Corey Seager, how many teams can turn to another premier shortstop in Trey Turner and move him over to shortstop? They had him playing out of position because of Seager. And then to replace Turner, they can go with Gavin Lux, a former top prospect. Look, the Dodgers are not a regular organization. They're still going to win. They're going to win big. They're probably going to win the division again. We knew they couldn't sign everyone. They still need to sign Walker Buehler to an extension when he hits free agency. If Cody Bellinger were to rebound, they're going to need to sign him to some sort of an extension. It's probably not going to be the mega extension that a lot of people envisioned 2 years ago. But if he does rebound this year, he will still get and in 2023 he'll get a sizable chunk in free agency. I mean, look, the Dodgers they're going to have to sign Trey Turner after this year. Right now, they only have Mookie Betts and Trevor Bauer on the books committed on the books after 2022. And I'm not talking about arbitration guys. I'm talking about guys in free agency. They're going to have to sign Turner. They're going to have to sign Buehler, potentially Bellinger. They have a lot of money committed to Mookie Betts. Will they re-sign Clayton Kershaw? It wasn't a panic move. They're going to be just fine. They're the deepest organization in Major League Baseball. This is what they've done. They're going to continue to do what they do. And I'm sure they have a shortstop in their system who's the next Corey Seager.
I mean, I think that's what it comes down to, and I would have to agree with that. Something to note, though, right? Robbie did say, I think the era of them being that kind of team that just goes out and gets their big guys is over, but
they still have Turner.
Not only that they still have Turner, I don't think it's insignificant to note that they still have been linked to two of the top free agents on the market, right? They've been linked to Carlos Correa, but also the more likely one, I think, could potentially happen is they've been linked to Freddie Freeman, and we talked about this last week.
See, they can be linked to guys, but I don't think that they're going to acquire them.
Well, I'm not saying they're going to acquire them. I say it's significant that they're still actually going after these big names.
Yeah, I mean, are they? I never deny the fact that they were trying, but I cannot see Carlos Correa going to the Dodgers. I cannot see Freddie Freeman going to the. We've all agreed unanimously that Freddie Freeman's going back to the Braves.
That is not true, though. Last week we said that our confidence, all of us, has gone down significantly.
It's gone down, but we still said that he's going back to the Braves.
I'm going to be honest. There's a report that came out this week that makes me think that it might be under 50% now, and that's the fact that the Braves not only checked in on Matt Olson, they're checking in on Anthony Rizzo, too.
Okay, so you're changing your stance on Freddie Freeman.
I feel like I might be. This is getting absolutely ridiculous. I know the lockout is happening, but if they truly wanted to give Freddie Freeman what he deserved to stay in Atlanta, it would have been done by now.
There's no reason.
This is stupid.
There's no reason for them to be cheap. They're being very cheap with the Albies and Acuna extensions. Give Freddie his money. Look, the Dodgers are going to I still think Freeman's staying in Atlanta, but the Dodgers, if for some reason he doesn't, the Dodgers are signing one of Carlos Correa or Freddie Freeman. Simply put, I mean they got to replace a left-handed bat in the lineup with Seager. They got to replace shortstop. That would fit in perfectly with Correa. I mean, look, all of Correa's suitors are pretty much gone. Detroit, Texas. You look at even the Mets, if you wanted to throw them in there, if they wanted to slide Lindor over, obviously because they were linked to Baez. I don't think the Mets were a huge suitor, but you just never really know. But a lot of his big suitors are out of the picture. Even the Yankees. The Dodgers are going to be right there in the Carlos Correa sweepstakes. I think the Red Sox could be a dark horse. I don't think they're going to end up getting him, but I think they're a dark horse in terms of going after him. But ultimately, Correa is going to go to the Dodgers, or he's probably going to go back to the Astros at this point. Where else is he going to go?
The Cubs.
The Cubs?
I think he's going to the Cubs.
don't be surprised if he goes to the Cubs.
Robbie, give me your team right now. What team do you think he's signing with?
The
Knowing
Cubs.
everything we know.
The
Is that your
Cubs.
pick?
That's my new pick.
Okay.
And this is my hot Robbie Cruz take of the offseason.
Good.
Carlos
Let's hear
Correa.
it.
Last year it was the Orioles are going to be better than the Red Sox. The year before that it was Luke Voigt's winning MVP. This year it's
It's third time
third time's a charm. Carlos Correa will be a Chicago Cub.
How much?
Oh gosh.
Is he getting the money he's projected to from the Cubs? The Cubs haven't spent traditionally.
He's getting more than Corey Seager is. And also, the Cubs have spent, Jason Hayward.
I meant like a mega contracts they haven't really done. I mean, everyone thought Bryce Harper was a Cub because his freaking dog was named Wrigley.
Oh,
that didn't go very well.
Oh, stop. They weren't even linked to Bryce Harper, though, when he was a free agent.
Very
when Bryce
lightly.
Harper was a free agent, it was only the Giants and the Phillies.
The Giants, Phillies, and the Dodgers on short-term.
Right. So, I don't know. I've heard the Cubs a lot recently. I think that Correa goes to the Cubs.
Okay.
And
more than Corey Seager.
Yep, he's getting more than Corey Seager.
Wow.
But here's my thing. I think the Dodgers are going to miss out on both Freeman and Correa. I can't see it.
I think Correa's going to the Dodgers.
You really do?
So then where's Freddie Freeman going?
Back to Atlanta.
Hey, if Andrew's right, that Freeman leaves Atlanta, I hope, and I almost want to say pray. I don't like to pray for sports, but I will pray that Correa signs with the Dodgers because that means somebody needs Freddie Freeman. And there's a team out there in New York that needs a first baseman, and it's not the Mets.
It makes a lot of sense. It's not the Mets. Yeah, I don't think it's the Mets.
And a lefty.
No, it does. It makes a lot of sense. And hey, I'm going to sit here and say, and this is going to sound weird, right? I hope Freddie Freeman leaves. Now, first take, you hear me say that. No kidding, you hope Freddie Freeman leaves. If I had the choice, I'd send him to the moon. He can play on the moon. I don't want to face him anymore, right? But at the same time, I hope he leaves because I do respect him as a player. He's frustrated me for years. But I respect him as a player. He's a very good baseball player. He's a lot of fun to watch when he's not playing the Phillies. And if I'm Freddie Freeman, I hope he leaves because I would just feel so disrespected. For as great as the Atlanta front office has been, and to be fair, that's probably because they're very conservative with their money, for as great as they've been and for the great decisions they've made, this is not one of them. This is embarrassing. Alex Anthopoulos and the rest of them need to step up and give him his money.
It's also interesting that when baseball wasn't locked out, as the days went on, you just heard more and more rumblings about Freeman possibly leaving Atlanta. That can't be a coincidence, right?
No, I don't think it's a coincidence at all. And the Matt Olson thing was one thing, right? Fine, maybe they just wanted to touch the waters. And then you find out, no, they're talking to multiple first basemen. It's like, come on. You have your franchise player here who's been a first baseman for, how long has he been there? 8 years? 9 years? And
Freeman?
He's been there for 9 or 10?
11 years, I think.
And if I'm Freddie Freeman, I hear that, I'm just like, you know what? Maybe I should just leave. Let me go to a place like New York or like L.A. where, guess what? I would be the reason that puts them over the top and gets them to a World Series. And by the way, I don't think it's a hot take to say either of those teams, if they sign him, that would be a guy who theoretically puts them over the top.
Absolutely. And I've heard people say that the Red Sox could also be interested in Freddie Freeman.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Freddie Freeman's not going to be a Red Sox, in my opinion. I think Bobby Dahlbeck has that position locked up for next year.
Yeah, but if the Red Sox can go get Freeman, they will trade Dahlbeck and Jarren Duran and whoever else for pitching and go get Freddie Freeman because he would be an ideal fit at Fenway Park.
I still think Anthony Rizzo makes the most sense for the Red Sox, though.
I don't think if they're not signing Freeman, they're not signing a first baseman.
So you think they're just going to run it back with Dahlbeck?
Bobby was a top 5 hitter in the American League in the second half, numbers wise.
Right.
I think you give him a full season to really get everything under his belt. Why not?
Yeah, I think that's very fair. Ultimately, though, I'll say this. My confidence has lowered in Freddie Freeman returning to the Braves. I still think I'm going to say 51% chance. I still think it's more likely that he returns than he leaves. But as the days go on, we hear more and more of these reports. I don't know. I really don't know. It's been botched.
See,
I can't think of a case, not to interrupt you, Robbie, but where a player has had this happen where they've been with a team for as long as they did. They didn't get an extension done, and it's taken this long. And I get it, it's a lockout now, but it's taken this long for them to work something out. It's embarrassing. Can you think of another case like that?
It nearly happened to, if you think about it, DJ LeMahieu last offseason. Remember, the Yankees were trying to lowball him originally, and
right.
I also look at.
But he wasn't like a franchise Yankees star, right? He just got there.
How about maybe like Derek Jeter in 2010?
That took a while.
Yeah, it took a while, and you heard teams like the Mets, the Dodgers, even the Red Sox for some reason. But, at the end of the day, he came to an agreement with the Yankees. But the Yankees chose not to lowball him, and I think that's the interesting part about this situation between Freeman and Atlanta. I still say, though, that Freeman goes back to Atlanta, and I think the Yankees are going to end up with Anthony Rizzo as their opening day first baseman, which I will be extremely disappointed about. But this is the New York Yankees. They love being mediocre. So This will happen.
No, they love being financially flexible, I think is the word. They like not going over the luxury tax, at least it seems like. Well, we got about 10 minutes left until the top of the hour here. Why don't we talk about a signing that can occur any day now, and it is not player-related, and that's, of course, managerial. There's two big spots that are open right now. The one that seems to be getting the most attention is, of course, the New York Mets, right? They went out, they got their guys, they got Marte, they got Canha, they got Max Scherzer, but they don't have anyone who is their manager right now. There's been a lot of names thrown around that they may interview, that they may consider. It seems like the number one position or the manager that they're really considering and has had the vocal support of people in the industry, and also Max Scherzer reportedly, is Buck Showalter. I know it's a name that James said on the show here fit the most with their group of players. James, I'm assuming you still think that, especially with these reports that he's kind of the favorite.
100%, and if your new fearless leader, Max Scherzer, wants Buck Showalter, go get him. He's a perfect old-school manager, will kick you in the teeth. He'll tell it exactly how it is, and that's the culture change that the New York Mets need. You know, they've been a mess for I don't know how many years, but Buck Showalter and Max Scherzer can fix it just like that. And Buck Showalter would be the perfect hiring for the New York Mets. He's always resurrected and turned his teams around, and guess what? As much of a mess as the Mets culture is, they're talent-wise, they're not far away at all, and this offseason has shown that they are right there, and Buck Showalter could be that missing ingredient that gets them from an underperforming, very talented team to a division-winning potential World Series team.
Robbie, are we feeling Buck Showalter, even now that he's reportedly a favorite, are we feeling him as the nex manager of the Mets, or do you think a different direction needs to be taken?
He's definitely going to be the next Mets manager, especially like James said. Max Scherzer really wants him. I think it'll be very interesting because Scherzer's going to throw 260 innings for next year, for crying out loud. If Buck Showalter's their manager, I mean, it'll be really interesting to see what happens. But James is right. He's going to change their culture. The Mets, they are an absolute mess, and if you want to get your act together, if you want to bring fans into the game interested, I think a guy like Buck Showalter, he's going to turn the Mets franchise around. As much as it pains me to say that, I mean, it just makes too much sense.
So you truly do think Buck Showalter is going to be the hire here?
If as a betting man, I love to bet, guys. I would bet that Buck Showalter will be the next Mets manager.
How about another name that we've been seeing pop up in Brad Ausmus? He's got connections there. He really does.
If Brad Ausmus is the next Mets manager, that would be a disaster waiting to happen. That would be a typical Mets hire, which is why I don't think that they are going to hire him, because I think the Mets are trying to change their franchise around, rejuvenate things. But Brad Ausmus is a terrible manager. The Tigers stunk. The Angels they wet the bed when he was the manager there. Brad Ausmus cannot be the Mets manager.
I've got a good name, Carlos Beltran.
It's interesting. Who was it? Cameron Maben today. Cameron Maben said if the Mets are smart, they're going to hire Carlos Beltran because he is the smartest baseball mind he's ever seen in his life.
Well, they tried. And obviously it didn't work out for them to no fault of their own.
What are we thinking about the Oakland Athletics, the other one that, they're probably going to have a tough year. They're not going to be competitive, but they got a managerial position open. I heard Mark Kotsay, potential name. Oh. I heard the other one is they, along with the Mets, are interviewing the Rays bench coach. I believe Contreras is his name.
Yeah, what about Jace Tingler?
And I was going to say, Jace Tingler's still out there. There's a lot of people that don't think he's a very good manager, but
maybe he'll take a year off. They'll remember how good he was in 20, and then, next managerial cycle in 2020, going into 2023, he'll pick up a job.
I think that's very likely. I mean, I don't know if they're going to go ahead and hire a guy like him with the year they're about to have, but, I think a guy like Kotsay would be a good one. I think the Rays bench, you can't go wrong with anyone from the Rays. Yeah, Sam Fold. Sam
Fold could be a guy who's in the next managerial cycle.
You think Sam Fold's going to get fired as general manager of the Phillies?
No, but he obviously wanted to go down to the dugout. I mean, he was a finalist with Alex Cora.
That's fair. That's fair.
Yeah, to change it up.
I don't know why you would give up that position, though. I mean, he is the general manager, right? People forget Dombrowski's
it's Dombrowski.
I know it's Dombrowski, right? But that's a pretty good position to have. I gotta assume. I don't know which one pays more, right? But
I can't see.
You're right, though. I think he wants to be a manager.
Yeah, I want to go back to Carlos Beltran to the Mets. I think that's an interesting idea.
Yeah.
If the Red Sox can hire Alex Cora and nobody questions it, I don't see why the Mets can't hire Carlos Beltran.
Cora was there before. I think that's what helped, and he didn't. What happened, he got fired for what happened in Houston. I think the shortened season in 2020, helped people forget about that. I think the better comparison would be A.J. Hinch going to a different team and then coming back. I don't think Carlos Beltran will get another shot with the Mets, but maybe he'll get another shot somewhere else.
The Mets should hire Ron Renicky as their manager.
No.
The Dodgers advanced scout.
Ron Renicky should not be anywhere near the Mets opening position if they are serious about trying to make the playoffs in 2022.
He's a great bench coach, great infield coach, great scout, not a good manager.
Yeah, I think that's putting it lightly. Not a very good manager indeed. So don't think it's going to be Ron Renicky. I think that's not exactly a hot take there. We'll have to see. There's a lot of potential names out there, but I think Buck Showalter, as we agree, is probably the most likely. And like James said, right, if Max Scherzer, your new leader, goes out and says, "Hey, I want Buck Showalter," you're gonna go get Buck Showalter. I don't really think that it's a question. So. Yeah, so that's hopefully something we can actually talk about news-wise, and that brings us to our closing point here of the show tonight. This will be our last show before the 4-week winter hiatus. We'll return on January 11th. Hopefully by then we do have some news to discuss. I mean, it's going to be pretty slow over the next couple of weeks while a deal is hopefully reached, and I don't think anyone here thinks a deal is going to be reached by the time we get back on January 11th.
No, I don't think so, and also around that time, keep your eye out for a potential interview.
Absolutely. We do have a potential interview lined up here on Nation's Pastime and Nation's Capital. I'm not going to give away anything about that.
You're not going to want to miss it.
You're not going to want to miss it. So keep your eyes for that. If everything goes as planned, our first show of after the hiatus on January 11th will feature that interview. So definitely keep posted to our social media at Nat Pastime Capital. We'll tease it there. We'll let you know all the details. It's going to be a very exciting one. The first, actually, I believe, in MPNC history. So definitely, it's very exciting stuff happening here at MPNC. Keep posted to our social media for all those updates. And other than that, we really hope that there is some kind of news to talk about. And if there's not, don't worry. We're still going to be having a lot of great content. We're going to get you through the MLB lockout here on Nation's Pastime in the Nation's Capital. We're going to delve in maybe a little bit of our own personal stories, delve into a little bit of baseball history, have some fun discussions about that. There's a lot of exciting stuff still. Hall of Fame. The Hall of Fame ballot's going to be end of January. That's always a fun discussion. There's some names on there this year in their final year that a lot of people think should and shouldn't be in the Hall of Fame. By the way, quick announcement or quick shout out to the guys who did make the Hall of Fame, and from the Veterans Committee, I believe it was officially. I think we had 3 names. Is that correct? I know Gil Hodges.
3 or 4. Minnie Munoso, Gil Hodges, Jim Cott, and there was one more. Dick Allen, notable snub. He missed by 1. He should be in the Hall of Fame.
I'm glad you agree with that, because this is something Philly fans have been saying for a very long time, right? Dick Allen was a force to be reckoned with, and it's an absolute shame that, by the way, once again, missed it by a single vote.
He'll get in. He'll get in at some point. Tony Oliva. That's
who the other one is.
Tony Oliva.
So yeah, shout out to those guys.
And shout out to Tim Kirkchin for receiving the 2022 BBWAA Career Excellence Award.
Yes, absolutely. Well deserved, I think. I think a lot of people respect him in the industry for sure. I mean, I don't think it was going to John Heyman, so it's absolutely it's good to see a guy like Tim win that. So congrats to him, congrats to the guys who made the Hall of Fame, and hey, to Dick Allen's family, it's going to happen one day. It's going to happen one day, especially with Mike Schmidt on that committee. Hopefully he'll do a little better job lobbying next time for getting Dick Allen into the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, most definitely. I don't think it's any question that Allen should have been a Hall of Famer. Going back to Tim Kirkchin, he's had an excellent career. He's been around for who knows how many years. I mean, the guy's been a journalist since before any of us were born. He's done really great work at ESPN. He's done really great work at newspapers. And, a lot of people just love watching him on television. Really great guy. He's really funny. And it's really exciting to see him in the Hall of Fame now.
Absolutely, and that pretty much then will conclude this episode of Nation's Pastime and Nation's Capital. As we said, we're going to be taking a winter hiatus here for the next 4 weeks. Live shows will resume on January 11th at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time right here on WCUA Radio. In the meantime, follow us, like we said, at Nat Pastime Cap on Instagram. Get all the updates regarding our shows, some highlights, signings when they happen, although there's not going to be a whole lot of them. And also teasing that interview that we do have coming up in the new year. So definitely go ahead and follow us at Nat Pastime Cap. And we hope to have some sort of news to discuss on that show as well, whether it be about a manager, whether it be about some rumors with some players. We don't know, but hopefully it will be something. And with that said, I'd like to wish you all a fantastic rest of your night.
Merry Christmas, guys. Peace out.